Samberg back, it is unbelievable the difference he makes to calming the waters for the Winnipeg Jets defensively.
Yeah, it was night and day getting him back there, especially with Neil Pionk, when we've been kind of subject to the rotating list of partners for him on that second pairing for the Jets. So yeah, he completely changes the look of that back end. And like you said, he's really come into his own on that puck management side of things. So it's great. It's exactly what the Jets need if they're gonna be successful going forward. And I think a lot of us maybe initially would have liked to have seen Ville Heinola play again with Dylan Coughlin on that third pairing, but outside of that, at least you got to see what the top four of the Jets, looks like tonight, and we'll see how that maybe changes after the trade deadline.
Yeah, and watching that game, it's safe to say a lot of us are correct on having that preference. I mean, that third pair was kind of the story last game, stepping up in Morrissey's absence, put up a 85% plus expected goals in a role where we're not used to seeing them play. The third pairing today, not so hot with a under 15% in that margin.
Yeah.
We got the answer as to what's going on here, and it's funny what happens when you push a coach with some comparison questions and make him have to answer a little bit where we could get some information from. We heard the reasoning for the deep pairs coming into this one and it's a funny reasoning, but again, we could take something out of it, was Garnier wanted to keep the left-right D pairings intact. And I mean, I guess Logan Stanley is more left-handed than Ville Heinola is the takeaway there. No, the real takeaway there is it's safe to say Logan Stanley is seen as a lock in this team's 5 of 6 defensemen, with that 6th spot being rotating cast of characters. I mean, I think the organization is playing with some real fire if you go into that building and you sit in those seats with the common folk, and how many people are pissed off that, hey, things might boil over. And if they do, they're going to have no one to blame but themselves on that one. But it was really nice to see. And I see Choices and Turd are both thinking along the lines of what we're talking about here, with getting Samberg back, with seeing that top 4 back to the groups that we're used to seeing. Choices TK says, defense looked much better with everyone back to more normal pairings. Comrie still can't get a win. 7 straight losses. And if I'm not mistaken, the run support moves to 11 or 12
11
in those 7 games. 11 goals.
11 goals in 7 games. You got it.
I mean, if Eric Comrie wasn't the kind, small, lovable guy, I'd be going into that room and kicking ass if I was him at this point. The Jets generated next to nothing at 5-on-5. Again, a continuous issue for this group. Turd Ferguson also on Dylan Samberg before we wrap up that conversation. Unreal how noticeable Samberg was tonight. If this had been my first game, I'd never know he missed 21 games. He looked great. And I do think, like, we're going to dive into some of the minutiae and stuff. For me, the story of this game going into it should have probably been about the Jets getting Dylan Samberg back. Of course, the org has to make some PR decisions elsewhere to protect certain guys that they like. Meanwhile, they're not protecting them. So that story goes off the wayside. But Dylan Samberg, his value to this organization, I honestly don't know if it could be undersold or oversold how much he means to this group.
Yeah, it's a completely different group with him back there. They absolutely need him there. We saw what it looked like with that. Yeah, just rotating door of partners for Pionk. It's night and day with Dylan Samberg, and that it shores up the second pairing to a point where you can really go out and focus on finding a partner for Josh Morrissey, and then you're set on there in your top 4 going into the playoffs, I think.
No, I agree. And I was talking with Doug, who I see just jumped in the chat. Obviously, at this point, Doug Henderson happens to be my season seat holder neighbor. And watching, like, I thought Neil had some of that unsteadiness in his game, but watching how just having that comfortable support partner in Samberg erases those rather than develops them into more trouble. It is the one pair, right, that the one D-man that's been able to stabilize Pionk, the one D-man that could kind of work with that chaos, and it gives the Jets a real second pairing. Dylan Samberg's value, man, it's a beauty to watch. Especially with what we've been seeing of late from the decor, as soon as he went down, It's been just a kind of a mess of trying different groups, seeing different things from different people. Being at that arena and being in those seats, it's the most comfortable I felt in some time with the Jets defensively. I thought they were pretty sound in this one.
Yeah, it's again, you got to see that difference of what it looks like with him in there and without him in there. And you get to be a lot more relaxed, a lot more calm. They can be down a goal and it's all right because you know that they're still in that game. They can strike with magic at any moment with that power play. Connor Hellebuck's the deciding factor usually in net. So at that point you go, okay, with this group out there, we'll be all right. We can withstand a little bit of a storm. We can try to find one for ourselves. You're not having to watch, left side defensive one Logan Stanley due to injury like we've had to recently, right?
Yes, exactly. John Chan, I'm gonna come back to your comment because this is something I do want to dive into here as this show gets going. But you mentioned Connor Hellebuck and how he's normally the focal point. He was the focal point before tonight's game. Getting to see him honored with his family for 300 wins, third fastest goalie, fastest American-born tender to do so. And me and Jordan were sitting in house today, diving in and checking out just how quick and where Connor Hellebuck is at compared to John Quick and Ryan Miller, who kind of were those cornerstones for the Americans in our lifetime, anyways, as far as those guys.
Yep.
Hellebuck's like just around those guys' wins totals with under like nearly 300 games less. It's remarkable how lucky we've been with Connor Hellebuck. Gets to celebrate the 300 wins, 500 starts, 40 shutouts. And it's one of those things. Obviously, I'm not the type of guy that takes it easy on True North and the Winnipeg Jets. I think these type of celebrations continue to show a sign or a side story of True North that they do really excel in. I thought that was really, really well done between, the silver stick for the 500 games. I always love those silver stick presentations. It's just such a cool and amazing accomplishment to kind of be there and celebrate with someone, to be in the NHL that long. Then that golden stick with the 300 wins, the mini sticks for both of his kids. Obviously the video plays and that place erupted when you see Dustin Byfuglien come on. This market will never forget that guy.
Never.
Second biggest cheer, though, I think might have been old Chuck Hellebuck, who continues to be a bit of a celebrity. Nice to see him in house. Nice to see Hellebuck get to take that in, and nice to see just how excited the crowd was. When it's one of those things, right? Like there's a lot of conversation nationally and around the league about like Winnipeg and players not wanting to be there, players this, players that, which I think the Jets have done, honestly, a better job that should dispel those notions on keeping a lot of their guys, getting guys to sign. It's a narrative I think is a little overblown at this point when you see how the Jets have operated.
Yep.
But I don't know if the Winnipeg Jets could have stumbled onto a better franchise player for what this market emblemizes than Connor Hellebuck, and just how much you see that synchronicity on a night like tonight. Like a night like when Hellebuck wins that 300 games and he's out there celebrating with the fans, pointing to the logo. It's just quite special what's been built here around the Winnipeg Jets, Connor Hellebuck and this fan base. And it was one of those special nights and special times to be a part of.
Yeah, we're getting to witness history. We're getting to see one of the all-time NHL greats once his career is all said and done. And we're getting to experience that history in real time, which makes it real difficult, right? It's hard to have that perspective when you're right in the middle of it. So, we do our best to try to enjoy it now, but I think it's going to take that time away after he hangs it up and it's all said and done before we realize just how incredible this career has been and just how lucky we are. And we better make sure that he's got a Stanley Cup ring to go along with that Hall of Fame and all-time great career.
Absolutely. But let's dive into some of the other stuff here. John Chan goes here. John Chan says this team has been average or below average of late, with 12 wins and 13 loss records since the hot start. So since the Winnipeg Jets have gone 15-1, Scott Arniel a ton of credit. I want to take this conversation to Scott Arniel. The one thing I really praised them during that 15-1 start and pushing the button was that comment we got to see from Sportsnet was, "You are what you continuously do."
Yeah.
Well, now over 20 plus game, like in a bigger stretch than that 15-1 start, you are now consistently a 500 hockey team that has consistently had one struggle, and that is being painfully average, or on a night like today, not even average, at generating on 5-on-5. One takeaway here when I was looking at the coaching staff, it's clear they've put a ton of work into that power play, and it's working. It was another positive night on the penalty kill. Another aspect before I get into some of the criticism I like to see is on the I want to say it was the second drawn power play. The Winnipeg Jets have full control, and they actually just get their top guys out there and get an extended power play by playing the 6-on-5 with the extra man instead of just rushing to get a shot on net or trying to create something quick so you can get to that power play. I like to see like the bench was clearly active in it. Samberg, who I believe originally held on to that puck to create that change, it was clear that the team was all on the same page. Try and create an extended power play out of the 6-on-5. Creative stuffs that are going to help this team score more goals. The power play gets the only one tonight on an absolute beauty. Morrissey goes to Connor on the half wall. Connor goes to Velarde, and Velarde continues to put highlight reel plays at a pace I haven't seen. Like this guy, when he has the puck on his stick, incredible to watch. Finds Mark Scheifele backdoor for a wide open net. Beautiful power play goal. However, going back to that, so the power play has consistently been great, especially when it's been all healthy. It's time to look at Scott O'Neill and how rigid he is with the Winnipeg Jets at 5-on-5 and really question his ability to adjust in what he's reading, because this stretch is longer than what we got the good from, if we're being completely front. This was another game for me. And one thing I've been keeping track of in the back of my head, and I've been waiting to get some time to really see if what I'm seeing reflects in some of the data. So if someone has that handy, I'm more than open to hearing it. But one thing I've consistently found is when the Jets run into a team like you see tonight, where the LA Kings are they're a speedier, aggressive team, especially defensively. That team played a hard defensive game against Winnipeg, really dictated the type of game that was being played in this one, and the Winnipeg Jets just couldn't crack it. And that's been a consistent theme, is when a team is able to defend and they're a bit more aggressive, the Jets offense goes to sleep. And one thing I've consistently noticed in games that we describe like this, the bottom six comes out of it fairly well. Larry's line was out for the 5-on-5 goal against, and that was a bit of a tough one. But this was another game where I felt, especially in that third period, Nino Niederreiter was really looking to create. This was another game where I thought Iafallo and his wheels on the forecheck helped differentiate things for that group. And I thought after a slow start to this game, I thought the back 40 was pretty good for them. This was a quick and can defend. Winnipeg's top six disappears, and it's not one or the other. It's typically speaking, the bottom six handles these games well, and the top six does not. And it was another game when we see the blender does not come out. There's 9 shots through 2 periods. It's another game where I have questions whether the top line, and we know they've been dazzling. We know they're getting people excited. We know that there was a stretch there that was a lot of fun. It's another game where I wonder about, as we get deeper into playoffs type hockey and play teams that can defend like this and those seams go away, if that's a group that should be the top line of the Winnipeg Jets come playoff time, the second line continues just to be, what's the point of it at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, we can only go to that well so much. It clearly is not a line that plays at the sum of its parts. And this was an interesting one. Obviously, Cole Perfetti's been the ire of a lot of the negative aspect on that line. So I do think like clear hole in that line is Nemestikov, and we know over a year and a half that Ehlers and Perfetti just don't read the game the same way. They don't play a similar style. This was a game where I thought Cole Perfetti was head and shoulders the best player on a bad second line. I thought Nick Ehlers today was just out to lunch most of this night. Even that power play goal, his support spot, like he wasn't even involved in that play. But this was a game where Nick Ehlers, at the top of the offensive zone, was just a turnover machine. And the one thing I kept noticing with the passes he was missing, they were behind guys. Like he wasn't the timing wasn't there for him at all on a night like this. I thought Cole Perfetti really showed something for me in a game that was described by Scott Arniel himself as a playoff style matchup. I saw Cole Perfetti outwork a guy like Anze Kopitar on multiple occasions. I thought he was the better player on that group. Still, now the streak goes to 8 games without a point. I saw something today that kind of goes against some of the narrative we've had pushed, and I wanted to highlight that. But I also wanted to highlight again this top 6 in games like this, and this is what the playoffs are going to look like. Disappears, and the Winnipeg Jets are not going to be able to go on a run if they cannot produce enough at 5-on-5. And this was just another example of it for me.
Yeah, we keep seeing the same thing happening over and over again with this. The roles are penciled in, or they're in ink. Like he's not making these changes to try to find a different combination when the 5-on-5 game just isn't working. At those times, it's just, okay, we're gonna wait for a power play, try to strike there, and see if we can squeeze it out. It's frustrating because that second line has individually a couple good players. It's just not a trio of guys that works well together. It's not getting you results. We've seen it over and over and over again in so many games, but it's just, that's the way it is because the other players all have their spots, predetermined. It's just, it's frustrating because you have the ability to move some things around to try to find a different look, but they won't do it for whatever reason, whether that's above Scott Arniel, whether that's Scott Arniel himself saying, I'm going to give these guys the chance every game to work this out. I don't know, but it's clear that against teams like, LA, like Colorado, it's not going to go well for you if you keep giving them the, that ability to win the matchups because, we're so rigid in it.
Yeah, it continues to be my thing. And it just, at what point? Like, my big takeaway here continues to be I see a coach that is either shit scared to make a change or just has completely lost track of his team over the last 2 months. And it's frustrating because I do think this team has more in it. The fact you've played that long at 5-on-5 with 0 adjustment of any kind, to me, is just, what are we doing here? Let's wake up a little bit. And it just, for me, I can't hype somebody up for something they said that I enjoyed and then not call them out when they're falling into this themselves. They're now consistently a 500 hockey team that can't produce at 5-on-5 and depends on its power play and its goaltender.
Yep.
Over in the chat here, Kevin Kowalik says, with Helly and Net, the Jets have a chance almost every night, whether they deserve it or not. You can't put a price on that. This was a game where I watched it. Me and Jordan were at the game together, and we're both saying, like, if we're being honest with ourselves and what we've seen from as this show was kind of getting off the ground, that kind of now sees it. The way I see it, the Winnipeg Jets are telling us they want to be a Stanley Cup team. They're telling us that both publicly and via their decision-making with signing some big-ticket guys to keep this thing going. I'm going to hold the Winnipeg Jets to being a Stanley Cup team and what that takes. Now, if it's a rebuild or a retool, I'm more than fine approaching this elsewhere. But if the goal is to be a Stanley Cup caliber team, the Winnipeg Jets aren't hitting that bar. Despite what the standing says, you can only live off the standings and that 15-1 start so long before facing reality.
Yeah, like you said, we've gone past enough games now beyond that start that we need to start looking at how they are now, not how they were then. It's we have to live in the moment, right? This is the team that's actually in front of us. That 15-1 start was incredible. That was, historic. That was groundbreaking. That was great. Now we need to capitalize on those banked points because really at the end of the day, if they don't make a deep run, that's all that start meant. All it meant was you banked some points early on. Great. Now let's do something with those points. Otherwise, it was for nothing. Otherwise, it was, a lot of fun, but we can't put a banner up that says a lot of fun.
15-1.
We're not the Nashville Predators.
Well, I think that's what's frustrating with me the longer this goes on with Scott Arniel is we've talked about how huge banking those points was in the NHL and in the standings and how his season goes and what that meant for the coaching staff to be able to adjust and try new things and be able to do different things because they had that game. Those bank points, as Turd Ferguson points out, have all but disappeared. It's getting tight in that standings. We've seen a lack of a willingness to even try and spark something different here. And that for me is awfully frustrating. It's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. It's How do you feel like they played tonight overall as the game? I want to see what your comments are compared to Scott Arniel's.
It's a tough one. I think they had their moments in this one. If their execution, and when I say execution, I'm thinking like passing and all those little details in the game. If that's a bit more, I do think they have some opportunities in this one to beat the Kings for being over aggressive at times, but the Winnipeg Jets just couldn't handle that aggression to be able to make those plays, right? It's one of those things, like you're playing against another team, you have to read and react, so it's not just like a Winnipeg thing. And I think that what the Kings were doing tonight really forced the Jets into a lot of those execution areas. On a night like tonight, like I said, I felt I saw something, and I felt like the bottom six fit into a game like this.
Yep.
I like that second pair and having Samberg back. But in games like this, and I've only seen some of Scott Arniel's presser tonight, where he self-describes this as a playoff game.
Yep.
Your top guys that you're going to need to be rolling and scoring in the playoffs, they weren't it most of this game. This was one of the worst games I've seen Mark Scheifele play in a while, if we're putting it blunt. There was a guy who it seemed more focused tonight on getting on the refs and whining than staying committed to the game. Takes 2 tough trip penalties that put the team down. And then in overtime, let's call it for what it is. Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor are completely selfish, both staying out there that long, and 3-on-3. They had a chance to score. They come back. There is no reason to take that extra shot and take that extra effort that late into a period with that much open ice, with how 3-on-3 works. Well, LA gets a change when you're gassed.
Yeah.
Like, there was just so much selfish shit like that if Scott Arniel's going to paint this as like a quality hockey game, I didn't see that.
So that's exactly what he painted it as. He said multiple times in the presser that he liked the way they played tonight. He really liked their game. This was as close to a playoff game as we've played so far. He said that twice as well. He said the only thing that was off was that LA was able to take a little bit more of the center of the ice than they were. And, it's a coin flip once it's in overtime.
Yeah, can't say I love that. And it was one of those things, too, when you're talking about the selfishness of that last play. Shout out to Jordan, who absolutely nails this as the play is developing. As soon as one of the two didn't change going up the other way, Jordan was kind of saying, one's got to get off.
Yep.
Neither goes. And as soon as the puck goes the other, gets turned over, Jordan turns to me, he's like, it's over, right? And Adrian Kempe
lo and behold
goes and snipes the other way. There was a lot of, I will say this, and it was close. And you could have called it, but you're never going to see a call like this. Kings might have gone away with too many men on that shift or on that change right before the goal, where the King player going off still has one skate on the ice, and the King controlling the puck had sent it to the guy coming on. So there was like a half second where, by the letter of the law, that is too many men, and that penalty is missed. So Neil Pionk really freaked out on the ref right after the game, and I believe Neil Pionk was right based on how I saw that play and the situation. But at the same time, two selfish decisions put you in that spot, and it's game over.
Yeah,
I can't just sit here and talk about the refs when you had the possession, you had the chance to change, you didn't, and it cost you an extra point.
Yep, 100%. There's no use whining about the refs in that instance when you had your future, in your hands and you squandered it. That's really what ended up happening there with, like you said, a real lazy and kind of selfish play by two guys there in overtime when the game means the most, when you're given the most amount of responsibility and the most amount of trust to go out there, and you've got the most amount of space to work with. Like, it's a lot of trust, but it's a lot of privilege as well, right? Like, you get both. And yeah, like you said, to get a real selfish decision in a real lazy spot is the worst time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was tough. And those are the leaders of the team, and those decisions cost you a point.
Yep, 100%.
I see Phyllis has joined the chat. Hey, Mikey and Nik. Checking in from the road, stopped at the moment. I was at the game and not much happening till the third line. And then she said, sorry, third period. Oops. Agreed. Honestly, that was a snoozer. of a live experience to be in, and it is it. The reason it's a snoozer, in my opinion, if you're familiar with the LA Kings, I believe Choices has pointed out statistically they're the best 5-on-5 defensive team in the NHL. They play a really boring brand of hockey, and the fact that this game is boring and looks the way it is tells me the Kings dictated the style of play the way they wanted to play, rather than Winnipeg coming in their home barn and dictating it. And the fact Scott Neal thinks that was like a good playoff game and a good sign for the team is pretty concerning for me.
Yeah, they got dominated in their own barn on the matchups when they have the last change. Like, it's crazy. You shouldn't be allowing the other team to come in and dictate your style of play in your building when you've got the ability to, to make that last change. It's getting real frustrating watching them just do the, Lucy and the football type thing every game. And it's frustrating for the sense that because it'll work sometimes. Sometimes it'll work. You'll get the games where they'll go out and, they'll play one of the lesser teams and they'll get to dominate them and they'll skate circles around them and the top line will have a whole bunch of points and it's a lot of fun. And then we go, come on, guys, we're talking about a first place team here. But when you get into the quote unquote playoff style games, the playoff type games, at that point, we're really starting to see where the cracks are. And we're not applying any mortar to those cracks. We're not trying to fix anything. We're just going, we'll see what happens next time. We'll get them next time. And unfortunately, in the playoffs, you only get 4 of those next times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was hoping, based on those comments, maybe there'd be a bit of self-reflection that skill group might not work in the playoff minutes. And based on those comments, safe to say I should not be optimistic about that.
Yeah, nope. I think we kind of need to accept the fact that this group, as presently constructed, is the group. That is the way that it's going to be, barring like a big name coming in from outside via trade. But these are the roles that these players are in, and they're set there. That's the way that they're going to roll them out there, come hell or high water. So it's tired. It's it's tiring to have it go out again and again, man. I'm really hoping that you're right and we do see that big name come in to shake up the makeup of the forward group, because otherwise, ooh, Nelly, it's going to be a short playoff run.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Unless someone wakes up within this Winnipeg Jets organization, which when you see the same thing happen year over year and nothing ever changed, hard for me to get hopeful about it. Let's take this somewhere else here quickly, because I found it was the first time Arneal did something different with a back-to-back. We've talked about it in the past when the situation has come up. What'd you think of him going to Comrie versus LA with the big divisional game and Connor Hellebuyck sitting there Saturday for the Avs?
I was pretty shocked, to be honest. I was not expecting Connor Hellebuyck to go tomorrow. I really thought they would have stuck with their trend of Comrie going on the second half of the nights and, trying to. And honestly, I'm kind of for the, regardless of what the opponents look like, you play your best players on night one, guarantee those 2 points, and then, hope for the best and a little bit of magic on night 2 if you can get it. So this was a break from that. It'll be interesting to see how it works, because you didn't get the 2 points tonight. You got the 1. So if Hellebuyck goes out tomorrow and does Hellebuyck things and, they steal the game, great. You look like a genius. If he gets a real tired performance from the guys in front of him all night and he's got to stand on his head and still take a loss, I'd be pretty pissed if I was him that I didn't get to play on my on the night honoring me, and then I get the tired group the next night over. I'd be a little choked.
See, I love when me and you have a different take on something, because I think it just adds to the conversation, because I'm going the opposite way with you. And I know this is a conversation me and Jordan were having all week. I'm a believer in using Connor Hellebuyck in the 4-point game against a division rival. And I also think there's something else to it being this time. And I'm going to dive into it. A lot of stuff like this sometimes can be like psychological and whatnot. So on one hand, maybe it's you want to give Connor Hellebuyck the night off on his celebration night. A lot going on. How do you kind of get back into the game on that, right? Like, there is that aspect. I like this because the Kings are a great defensive team, but not necessarily the most offensively gifted. So you go Comrie here, who can't get run support to save his life, unfortunately. You have your guy against Colorado, but the big one. And this is where it's tough because obviously it's a tired group. We've seen how poorly the Jets look on back-to-backs this year. It hasn't been a situation that has been too kind for this group. So you're likely seeing Connor Hellebuck in front of a group that's not going to be near 100%. Why I like this one goes back to last April.
Revenge game.
It's Connor Hellebuck with a depleted Winnipeg Jets in front of him with a chance to make a statement against the Colorado Avalanche while he's at the peak of his career right now.
Okay.
That's why another aspect, like there's so many things you could go into this. I like the idea of challenging and having Connor Hellebuck against the Colorado Avalanche after how last year went for him and the team in front of a depleted group. Let's see what you got, big boy. You're our MVP. You're our guy. Here's your shot. You get the Colorado Avalanche. I like that message. And I that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Scott Arniel playing 4D chess. Excellent. I'm into it. Let's go.
Yeah, that's just how that was my takeaway from that one.
Can you imagine though if he does go out tomorrow and just absolutely stands on his head and just wills them to a win by himself? That'd be a lot of fun.
What does that do for him mentally going into a potential series against Colorado again this year? What does it do for the group in front of him potentially if he were to do that against Colorado? I think there's some real mental gymnastic type stakes to this decision, and if it works out.
Honestly, though, I think the team needs to be learning less that Connor Hellebuck will just always bail them out no matter how they play in front of him. So I don't know. Now I'm back on the other side of it.
No, that's fair too. And I do get your like theory with it, especially with a group that is at the top of their division. They have those bank points. You can kind of go about it with, let's go get those 2 points. We don't need the extra 2. Whereas you might get a little bit more aggressive and do it the way I like to do if you're chasing those points. So I do understand. Like, there's one of those things. They get a point today. I thought Comrie was solid. It wasn't on him again. Now let's see what the MVP of Winnipeg could do against Colorado on a back-to-back tomorrow.
Our good friend on Twitch, Harrison HLL Living Loco. Oh God, if the Jets beat the Avs only on Helly, it's gonna fuck us so hard for the future. Yeah, see, that's where I'm kind of at with that one, man. I don't trust them to not be like, oh good, they've got it, it's fine.
No, I get that. I get that too. I gotta say, personally, I love these Friday, Saturday back-to-backs and getting to be a part of 2 games in this city. It always, and like this market really enjoys those Saturday night hockey games. The Hockey Night in Canada, the building feels different.
Yep.
I want to give a shout out to one of our supporters, one of our listeners. He's always in the chat. He's going away at it on Twitch right now. Choices TK had come up from the States, from down in Tuscan this week to come watch the Friday, Saturday back-to-back. I got to meet him finally. It was great to shake his hand, chat a little Jets, get to know him a bit better. So I just want to give him a shout out for making the trip for this double header, getting to see the Connor Hellebuck ceremony, who he let me know he's got 4 Connor Hellebuck jerseys. I might have to start trying to beat that collection. Shout out Choices.
Hell yeah, Choices.
This weekend.
Love that. I've only got 1 Hellebuck jersey. I'm falling behind here.
Yeah, same. So the one I'm really looking for is the All-Star game from like the Florida, like the Miami Vice.
Ooh, yep.
Oh, that's the one I'm looking for.
That's a nice one.
On your point, Mikey, and where Harrison was going, and Julian tends to agree, and I think he sums this up nicely. And I do think this is where there's a disconnect with the Winnipeg Jets and how they approach their own team, their own situation, versus probably the reality of their game at the bigger level. Julian says one of the worst takeaways from any game the management or coaching staff can take is it's all good. And I tend to believe that as well.
Yep, absolutely. We got our first call if you're ready.
Let's go to the phones. Love to hear from the people.
Hey, caller, thanks for holding. You're on the landing strip now. What's your name? What would you like to talk about?
What's up, fellas? This is Raul phoning. Just thoughts on the game tonight. Actually, I don't have many thoughts on the game. I watched it, but I didn't watch it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yep.
But you guys were talking about how rigid Arneal has been. You know what? It would be like, to me, like, okay, we're nearing the trade deadline, right? And all year minus an Ehlers injury and an Appleton injury, we literally ran the same lines, right? Like, if you look at the top 10 on Money Puck, most used lines, like 3 of them are the Jets' top 9 lines. Like, the only thing he's not rigid on is the third pair defense and the fourth line, the 2 most, like, inconsequential parts of your lineup. So, like, we're going up to the trade deadline, and the Jets have literally not tried anything other than, you know, a brief stint with Chibrikov and Lambert because of Ehlers' injury, and now Iafallo with Appleton's injury, right? So it's like, you know, wouldn't it behoove or make sense for the team to, like, you know, try some other things and see, you know what, maybe something else clicks and you don't have to go. I know you guys want to trade a first and shit like that, but maybe, you know, you find a chemistry, you find a line mix that works, and you don't have to, you know, bend balls to the wall for whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they literally have not tried anything else. And I understand Connor Scheifele-Velarde has been pretty good this year relative to years past. But your middle 6, you know, after a hot start from the Lowry line is kind of giving you nothing. And, you know, like the fourth line is just doing cardio and just giving everyone else a breather, basically. But, yeah, so it's basically the top line are bust right now, and they're not trying anything else. And we're nearing the trade deadline, and it's like, you know, you haven't tried anything else. So, yeah. I don't kind of understand. And to me, you look at the top 6 or the top 9, let's say, your 2 weakest top 9ers are Perfetti and Nemeskov, and they're on the same line. And people are wondering, oh, why can't the second line score? Well, gee, I don't know. You have 2 of your worst top 9ers on that line, and I love Ehlers. He hasn't been, you know, the line driver, or whatever you want to say, in years past. And I don't know. To me, it's like you break up your 2 weakest links, and you kind of, you know, spread the depth a little bit. But yeah, just my thoughts is, like, we're nearing the trade deadline. We've literally not tried anything else. And yeah, and I have no idea why, on a lesser note, I have no idea why Heinola wasn't in the game today. Like, after his game last, the other day, he looked really good. But yeah, otherwise, honestly, this game was super boring. Like, I hate Friday and Saturday night games where they're like this. So other than that, boys, I'll hang up and continue listening. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for calling, Rahul. Always looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And you go a couple places that I'm really invested in here, so I'm going to dive in as well. Mikey, before I send it back your way. On the Heinola thing, just frustrating at this point. The org's made it pretty clear. Just let this kid go try his career elsewhere, get something for him. I don't know how many times you can stop and start someone's career, and every time they do have a good game, you sit them. Like, what does that tell you to the player? Like, what is the player at this point thinking? At the end of the day, number 6 defenseman is a pretty inconsequential spot. So was the fourth line, which Rahul points out great. And that's the only places Scott Arneal has been willing to change. So if you want to see something better, those aren't the spots to go. On the topic of not trying anything before the trade deadline and potentially not having to give up more assets and whatnot, this is what I find fascinating, because this isn't normal, what you're seeing in Winnipeg as far as league wide, and not trying absolutely anything through 40 plus games different. This is not something you see. This is not just like a first place team. How can you change anything? The Washington Capitals have been right there with Winnipeg, and they don't have 3 lines in the top 10 of Money Puck. Teams try and find ways to get better. Teams try different things. Teams want to understand better of what's in that team before trading assets. And what's crazy to me is, like, at a high level, of course, like, we're all watching the sport, enjoy the sport. We like hockey. But at a high level, this is a $1 billion business. And what's crazy to me, and I was kind of talking about it the other day with the JT Miller stuff, as a billion-dollar business, how are you not exhausting the assets within your business, but for trading a first-round pick, which is going to have $7 to $10 million of value for the organization, maybe more? Like, all these things add up to the business and what happens on ice, and you're putting your business and yourself behind the 8 ball by not having flexibility to see if there's a better way to do it with the collection of talent in Winnipeg. One of the things I've been strong about for the last couple of years is the Winnipeg Jets top end guys are good hockey players. They are a talented group. They aren't the elite of the elite in the NHL, but they have quality depth forwards as well. I think that the Jets roster has 13 NHL forwards. Some of them just do cardio, but they're not killing you. How do you possibly, if you don't have enough talent at the top, how can you potentially go into matchups and give yourself an advantage? By spreading it out, by making 3 lines that can contribute offensively, that make the other coach and other team think about who are we going to have to match up against. The Winnipeg Jets are a very easy team to look at and say, okay, I'm going to try and take out the top line, and that's about it. That's all I have to do at 5-on-5. And there is other ways. We haven't seen them. There's other ways. I don't know, man. What's your thoughts on what Rahul had to say there? For me, you look at it from a business. What kind of business operates that way before making big investments into the business? It's frustrating.
Yeah, you've got to help us, Doc. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
That's how I feel. That's essentially how I feel. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. It's just the way that they're approaching it right now. Choices nails it in the chat that they're trying to recapture that 15-1 start. It worked once, so it'll work again. Is their mentality, right? Look, we've all been in that relationship where, once things start going rough, the things are rocky, you're fighting all the time. You try to go back and you try to recapture that magic from the beginning, right? You try to go back to those same places. Look, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. You got to grow. You got to learn. You got to keep changing. Hockey's like life like that, right? You got to keep trying to get better. And unfortunately, they're stagnant right now. They've decided that these are the roles that these players can fill, and they're not willing to even experiment to see if there is something, that you could be doing differently, that you could be doing better. It's essentially like wearing sweats on your date night after you've been with your person too long. That's just the way it is.
Oh, so you're saying I shouldn't be wearing sweats out? Fuck, I'm gonna have to adjust there.
I'll help you get dressed. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I like the analogies. I completely agree. We'll see where this goes, but I think many of us that have paid attention to this team in depth know where this is going, and that's what's annoying about it. Like, hockey should be fun, and I had a lot of fun with this group obviously during that 15-1 start, and I think Choices nails it that they are trying to recapture that, which is silly because we've known for years and years that should have been. That was not the norm. That was the come out of nowhere. HH Living Loco says, I just don't understand what the fuck any of the stats summit was for if they're not going to change only the PP and PK, leave everything else the same. Honestly, it's safe to say at this point in the season, the analytics summit was more hype and PR to, maybe get some criticism off their back than anything of actual substance.
The analytics
of the power play.
The analytics summit were the friends we made along the way. Okay, that's really what that was all about.
Jordan Voth, our boy, over on the chat in YouTube says, I'm folding laundry with my wife and I got a strong glare over the sweatpants comment. Hey, I feel you, Voth. We got to be comfortable sometimes. I know. I know my dog. Actually, this is something I've discovered. I'm a big sweatpants and pajamas guy, as you've probably seen on the live streams when I'm in my own home. And it's funny now having the puppy because as soon as I throw on jeans or like a nicer outfit, the puppy goes running to hide because he knows he's about to get put in the kennel.
Oh, yes.
That is how drastic it is. So, Bother, I relate, buddy. I relate.
They're smart, those little bastards. They know.
Yeah. And you know what, Mike F puts it a fine way here, talking about like the frustration and whatnot and having fun with the sport. He comments this as I was kind of talking about it. Mike says it's fine, but we are at the ceiling, and that's kind of that's probably the best summary of
Yep.
where the Winnipeg Jets are at. You know what? They're giving you a playoff team. You know what? There's a lot of fun. There's some highlights. There's some good times at the arena. But any talk of them actually taking a real step is hogwash. It's hope. It's hopium.
Yeah, unless they
Yeah.
unless they make a change or they bring somebody in, this is the way that it's going to go. And we shouldn't even be shocked by it. We shouldn't even be surprised by it. I'm not even mad at it anymore. I've given up being upset that Heinola has to watch Logan Stanley vomit on his skates, every second night from the press box while he eats popcorn. I'm not even mad about it anymore. I actually I agree with Julian over on the YouTube chat. Billy needs to do a capo caco to get traded. Let's start calling some of these guys out.
Well, okay, couple things there. Last comment on the defense side of things. This actually ties into Rahul's comment about like not trying new things. Let's use this org's approach with the defenseman as just a clear example of why this stuff matters. Big picture. Because of this 170 game plus 9+ year bet on Stanley, the Winnipeg Jets lost on waivers Jonathan Kovacevic, who is now the right-handed defenseman on the best shutdown pair in the NHL this year, for free. Declan Chisholm, who was a guy I was always pretty much hyping up in the early days of this pod, is someone I enjoyed watching with the Manitoba Moose. The way he skates and whatnot, never got an opportunity in Winnipeg. Guess what? He's a top 4 defenseman in Minnesota. As we're still at the age of 26 and a half, publicly from the coach himself saying he's not going to get better in the press box and still developing a guy that was used over him. That's just like one example of that Rahul conversation and why people should be considering that. On Twitch, Choices TK had said the Analytics Summit was an attempt to pacify the loud Twitter folks. And honestly, with this organization, I wouldn't be surprised if that played in a little bit.
Yep.
Scott Westman says, Nick, if I call in, will Mikey hang up on me? Scott, give us a call, buddy.
We'll give it a
Make
shot.
Sure you talk. Make sure you talk. We didn't hear from you. On our end, anyways. Check if your phone's on mute, but call in. I'd love to hear from you.
And we know that the phones work because we just talked to Rahul, so you can't, it's not my fault this time, Scott.
Yeah, there you go.
The Choices TK over on the Twitch chat is kind of echoing my current fear with the group after what we've heard in the media and from Scott Arniel. Is it any surprise that the Jets org makes the wrong conclusion from last year's trade deadline? Looking at their ads and concluding that didn't work, so we need to stand pat this time instead of we acquired marginal players and not difference makers. And that's kind of what I'm worried about, that they're going to look at last year and go, well, it didn't put us over, so why add? Let's go with what we have and, just fill out some depth. I'm still worried.
Yeah, I'll pitch something to you because it's the one, and I know it's out there. Like I know, like I'm going against the grain of people that have connections and are significantly more plugged in than me. It's just something I can't buy. I know the media is also used in some way. Like my perception continues to be, and you've highlighted this really well, Mikey, when it comes to especially the rental market. Kevin Cheveldayoff will not overpay. He'll go find like something he's comfortable with value-wise. Yeah. My perception continues to be Chevy is using the media to try and downplay the market so he could kind of squeeze his type of preferred value in. I would be really, really surprised by that. That's just my read. I'm having trouble taking that report at face value.
I hope you're right. That's because they need it. They need that big shakeup up front.
I'll say this though. Let's say they did. Let's say they didn't buy, which I don't see coming. But let's walk down that path for a second here. Let's walk down that road. They don't buy, and they're probably out 4 games, maybe 5. I think 6 would be stretching it with this roster if we're just being straight up about it. So let's say they don't buy and they arrived at this conclusion that it didn't work last year. Let's ride with the group we were in, and they get smoked. Is that what the org needs to see, that this core group isn't what it's been made out to be in their eyes? Would that change how they view the following season and what needs to happen in Winnipeg. And is that it's frustrating because it means another wasted year of Connor Hellebuyck's prime. But is that potentially a positive coming into the summer?
Oh my,
That way.
oh my sweet summer child. Like, you think that would make the change there? No, I don't think it would. I really don't. I think they would find whatever the excuse would be up to that point to say that, we did our best, we got in there, because of X, Y, or Z, it just didn't work out. But, a couple bounces go our way and it's a different series, yada, yada, yada. Connor Hellebuyck will steal at least, one of those games for them, maybe even two. It's possible, so they can look at it and go, look, we were right in it the whole way. So no, I actually don't. I think the only way change comes is through success with this group. I don't think, because we've seen them not have it. We've seen them have high expectations and fail. We've seen them have low expectations and fail. We've seen them have, middling success twice. So I honestly don't. I think it'll be real success that gets this group changed. It'll have to be a big player that makes the guys go, yeah, I want to play with them, to shake up the lines. And they'll have to have a lot of success before it'll spark that change. I do.
And no, that's fair. And you're likely right. I continue to be like this eternal optimist that at some point someone's gonna get concussed and realize, hey, maybe there's different ways to go about things. But Mike F does it, honestly. Mike, I gotta let you know this. Mike does a great job keeping things even keel and just reminding us where the team is at. Because I think Mike nails this comment. He says this season is already a win for the Winnipeg Jets. They'll be a playoff team. They could add something without needing to jeopardize the future. Bianca and Connor are going to extend. They're happy. And I do think Mike, with a bit of a truth bomb there, as for what the Jets are happy with and what their priorities lie. And that's kind of the frustrating gulf between the people that tune into this show and want to see the Winnipeg Jets truly take a step and be that group they can go on a proud run around and get behind, and where the Winnipeg Jets as an organization are comfortable with their business.
Yeah, and on one hand, right, you can kind of understand it's a long-term game, right? This is, it's a marathon, not a sprint, whatever cliche you want to use. But at a hockey ops level, it is, right? It's supposed to be a long-term plan. You should have a 2, 3, 5-year plan at any time kind of thing. But at some point, that plan has to actually culminate in a Stanley Cup. That plan is supposed to culminate in a championship. That plan is supposed to culminate in a goddamn banner of some kind hanging from the rafters to say, look, what we were planning was good, was actually smart. If you just keep planning for the future forever and going, yeah, but 2 years from now, it doesn't mean anything. You have to have at some point to push the chips in and take a risk. And I'm worried that risk isn't going to be this year when it should be, because they've got the rest of the pieces ready and just kind of waiting.
Yeah, no, I hear ya. And Turd says over on YouTube, he continues to say, jeopardize the future. We have the most dominant goalie in the world. Man, this org is frustrating. Make a deal that can impact this year and the next two. Quit the one and done plans, build a winner. And that's where I just want to continue to push this. I think it's one thing to be a fan and want the Winnipeg Jets to do everything possible to win. Of course we want that. We're spending good money to support this team. We're spending good money to go to that rink. We're clearly dedicated to what this product is. I think what we should continue to do is talk about the Winnipeg Jets have, who I think is the third best defenseman in the NHL, in Josh Morrissey.
Mm-hmm.
They have the best goaltender in the world in Connor Hellebuyck.
Yep.
And those are not the types of pieces that come around easily and often. And when you have those type of pieces in-house, you should be doing everything possible to try and win with them. And that continues to be my belief with the Winnipeg Jets. So
here's a half-baked thought that I've just kind of had now as we're talking and reading the chat. Other GMs in other cities generally have a short shelf life, right? You don't spend usually 10 plus years in a GM role lately. that hasn't been the case in the last couple decades. You've seen a lot of shorter tenures for guys, especially in some of the bigger markets because there's higher expectations. I'm starting to wonder if the fact that Kevin Cheveldayoff has the job security that he has, that there's no inclination to take a big swing, to take a big risk, to quote unquote try to save your job, to try to save your spot, to try to make your mark and show that, oh, they should keep me here long term. He knows that he's here long term. He knows that he's not going anywhere, and he might be a little bit more focused on that long term future constantly, which is why he holds on to guys, a little bit longer than maybe he should, why he's so, stuck on wanting to keep those first rounders, because he has such a focus on that 5-year plan as opposed to the 1 to 2 year plan. And I'm starting to think that security for him is great, but it might be, hindering to the Jets in their short-term goals of winning a Stanley Cup. You want that long-term success of, being in it every year and having good players and selling out your building, but you do need to have that cutthroat ability at some point to try to win now. And I don't know if we have that in Kevin Cheveldayoff, and if he wouldn't be maybe better suited to a POHO type position, right? President of Hockey Ops, to work on that long term and have somebody with, maybe a bit more connection in the league and a little bit more of a cutthroat attitude, or a little bit more willing to make that, that move early. I just wonder if the Jets need some of that right now when they're in this position.
We shall see. I'm going to read out a couple of the last comments on this topic. We're going to jump into the 3 stars, and then let's get out of here with our weekend. Gilbert Marion over on YouTube says, I do want to see a parade in my lifetime. Mike F. Mike F. understands True North. Mike F. nails this, says, they're extremely risk adverse, and for a business, that's not exactly crazy. In brackets, for an entertainment business, ... who knows? He also says Chipman said in interviews when they first brought the team here, he admired the Nashville Predators as a model. Look up Nashville's record before the Jets came back. Another valid point in all this.
Yep,
the Jets are now better than 1.0. Have to give some of the credit to ownership, and they did play the game to get the team here. Can't solely hate, even if it's not as fun as we want. And I think those are all absolutely correct statements from Mike F. on this topic. Let's go, and it turned also as a bit of a pushback on the always looking for the future, but you're not playing those first rounders in this window. As Billy, who's 23, you can replace those picks down the road. You can't have your cake and eat it too, and it's the absolute toughest thing to do in the NHL is to have your cake and eat it too. Let's go to the 3 stars. As usual, want to thank the commenters, the callers that are here making this conversation go. A lot of good topics.
We got the best viewers.
Absolutely, we do. We're lucky to get to spit around ideas with the people that give us their time and energy after Winnipeg Jets games. Mikey, let's go to it. Who are your 3 stars?
All right, 3 stars. At number 3, I'm giving it to the fans inside the arena tonight who were still willing to chant at the end of the game after what was maybe the snoringest game that they've played in a while. I was quite impressed that there were still fans awake and loud enough up in the stands that we could hear the chants on TV. So big ups to you, Nick, and all the fans that actually showed up tonight to try to will them to that second point, because, man, they needed it. 2nd star, Eric Comrie. Do I feel bad for Eric Comrie, man. This guy can't catch a break. He's the nicest fucking human being on the face of the earth. And the team just won't do anything for him in the games that he's out there. Feel so bad. I thought he was fine again tonight. He's not Connor Hellebuck. He doesn't have the ability to overcome the poor play in front of him. But I don't think he was the reason that they lost the game tonight. So good for Comrie. And number 1 star, I'm going to give it to Alex Iafallo. I just really like his game lately. The elevation of the third line. He's getting to play with guys that have a little bit more skill, that can read the game at a pace that he can read it at. And what he's brought to that third line is a hell of a lot more than what Mason Appleton was. And I thought tonight was a good example of it. So AI, you get my number 1 star.
Okay, I'm gonna go the same place you did, but I'm gonna change it up again because something cool happened in the arena tonight that I really enjoyed, and it happened at the exact opposite corner. And I believe if Mike F was in attendance, he would have been a part of this. If not, I know who he knows the group that was. On the other side of the rink during this game, there was one section that was singing "Hey Baby" and trying to get that building awake. And the whole section would get involved and they would all stomp together. They were singing the song in unison. We could pick that up. That was excellent. They are my 3 stars in this one.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna go for it. Sorry.
I just want to say it made its way onto. We heard it on the broadcast. So they keep it going, those guys. Whoever you are, Mike, if you're part of that group or if you know anybody in that group, if anybody does out there, let them know. We heard it on the broadcast. We love it. It's awesome. Keep it up. I love that shit.
Yeah, and if you're in the barn, don't be afraid to join them. That was really cool to see. I really appreciated that. That added some little spark in this game. My number 2 star, we were just talking about them as an org and if they really want to take this over, what the business looks like. I'm going to give True North the 2nd star for the Hellbuck ceremony. I thought that's exactly how you want to see one of the truly elite of the elite celebrated for what he's meant to this program. It is clear that the org knows he's the guy. Everyone knows he's the guy. There's surprises. I thought they nailed that ceremony. It was great to be a part of. The team pick at the end was obviously awesome touch. Have everyone over there celebrating with him. True North continues, despite some grievances elsewhere. True North continues to celebrate their own in a way that I think is very impressive and very meaningful. My 2nd star there. And I already touched on it early on in this show. The Jets were clearly missing this guy. For me at the rink, he was my standout in his first game back. Dylan Samberg and what he means to this team, I think we're on full display in this one. Great to have Samberg back. And I'm just going to throw it out there. Probably led to some razzing in the room, as you'd expect. But I'm hoping old Samberg continues making some banger TikToks with his wife. I really enjoyed that. I like to see the personality away from the rink and seeing him, having a good time in a way that, a hockey player wouldn't necessarily do with his wife. I love that shit. You know what, Dylan Samberg? Number 1 star, baby.
Hell yeah. I totally forgot about that. I'm with you on it. I love it. We need more personality in hockey. Out of all of the big North American pro sports that are, that we watch, easily hockey is the one that has the biggest gap when it comes to personality from the athletes and the media and stuff. So I love it. I love it. More of it would be great. I'm just so happy Dylan Samberg is back, man.
Same, man. Good to see. We'll be back tomorrow after the Winnipeg Jets go head-to-head on the back-to-back with the Colorado Avalanche. We will see you then tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Right on. You guys all know the drill. Tell 2 friends to tell 2 friends. Rate, review, and remember, the landing strip for your Winnipeg Jets postgame show.